Man, I used to love Elon Musk. I really did. Back in the early days of Tesla, I would watch his presentations all the time because in those younger years, I really saw him as a sort of pioneer, just someone that was making an electric car when no other auto manufacturer would, slowly building the network of charging stations all across the United States to make it more feasible, while also putting pressure on those auto manufacturers to actually get into the electric car market. But I remember there was one presentation in particular where Elon was talking about the amount of solar panels that it would take to generate enough power to power the entire United States. And he even showed this on the map, just this tiny little red square down in Texas, where if that entire red square were just solar panels, that was enough to power the entire United States. And he made what I thought was a really good point at the time, was that most of that landmass would actually be on rooftops. And it just sounded so good and exactly what we needed. For me, at the time at least, it really seemed that Musk was throwing a lot of money, a lot of engineers, a lot of time and energy into making electric cars and solar panels in the form of the Tesla solar roofs and their charging station. And this would all culminate into putting a dent into our global emissions, moving us away from fossil fuels, which would in turn help us mitigate the worst effects of climate change, which, as the data suggests, global temperatures are rising year after year after year, along with the onset of other crazy weather patterns. But of course, he ran other companies as well, right? He had the Boring Company, which was supposed to help underground transportation. He also had Neuralink, which was supposed to just slap a computer into our brains. But while Tesla was always my favorite, the holy grail was SpaceX. Exploring the final frontier, going into space, going to Mars, and it all just sounded so good to my not fully developed brain. Now, of course, there are plenty of positives to the story. Of course, Tesla in of itself has proven to be a very successful company. The Boring Company, not so much. I think they've only completed like one tunnel and had multiple other cancellations of projects, along with a number of safety concerns. But I think the work with SpaceX has proven to be the most impressive, just actually being able to reuse rocket boosters and just rockets in general, which will then slowly bring down the price of launching into space. That in of itself is still very exciting. It's still a first for humanity, and it's still one hell of an accomplishment. So from my perspective, for the longest time, I had huge admiration for Elon Musk and everything that he had done, everything that he set out to do, and then he called a rescued diver in Thailand a pedo. Things that make you go, Long story short, for those who don't know, there were a dozen boys and their soccer coach who were trapped in a cave in Thailand. The cave had flooded. Elon Musk suggested using a submarine that he had made with his team of engineers, just a small one-man sub, to then go into the cave and rescue the boys. But ultimately, the submarine was rejected by the rescue workers, citing that the cave was too narrow and treacherous for such a mechanism. So yes, the boys were rescued, and then Elon Musk on Twitter called the rescuer a pedophile. And I was like, what the fuck? What the hell is that about? Now, maybe it was just my lack of awareness in some of the other things that Elon had done previous to that I just wasn't privy to, but that was the first time that I myself kind of took a step back and said, wait a second. One, that's just an obviously stupid remark, but also just like the jealousy for someone else's accomplishment that you did not achieve yourself. Besides being incredibly childish, it was just really stupid. But as it turns out, that was actually just the beginning. Because in 2022, Elon would acquire Twitter for the share price of $4.19 a share, which he would then round up to $4.20 because weed. And of course, there are multiple things that happened since. We're not going to cover all of them, but just a few things to note besides, say, violations of labor laws for his companies, but also just various other remarks and actions, like the accusations of censorship in India for those who were criticizing the government, or even more insidious, when the United States was accused of sponsoring a coup in Bolivia, Elon Musk tweeted, I kid you not, "We will coup who we want." Yep, just a totally normal tweet from a totally normal guy. Now, going back to the initial acquisition of Twitter, Elon Musk and many others like him saw Twitter as a social media platform that was pushing a political agenda, that they were stifling dissent within the platform, and controlling the narrative of various domestic and global issues. Just for Elon Musk to buy Twitter, rename it X, start pushing a political agenda, stifling dissent within the platform, and controlling the narrative between various domestic and global issues, all in the name of free speech. So this all leads us to the Twitter files, which is a pretty interesting topic. I think Destiny has a really good take on this. Destiny himself actually interviewed 3 of the journalists who helped break that story, and he basically came to the conclusion that the general narrative surrounding the Twitter files was indeed false, that it didn't necessarily show government censorship, but the complex debate of an institution grappling with how to move forward with all these requests to remove tweets. There were multiple accounts of multiple politicians from both sides of the aisle having their request denied many times. Not only that, but the journalists that Destiny was interviewing, they admitted that they didn't reach out to anybody that they were writing about. They simply took those internal emails at face value, never reaching out for comments, for questions, as any good journalist would do to maintain your integrity. So of course the reports were very one-sided, with Elon Musk having a huge incentive to show that Twitter, before he bought it, had some kind of evidence of wrongdoing. It was in his best interest to make Twitter look as bad as possible prior to his acquisition. And then of course you have Matt Taibbi, who was more or less the main journalist who broke this story. But after breaking the Twitter files story, Taibbi would go on to actually leave Twitter because Twitter was blocking links to Substack, which was basically the entire point of him using Twitter in the first place. So not long after breaking that story, he left to go promote his Substack elsewhere. Then of course you have the election itself, where Elon was pumping in millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to the Trump campaign, which of course afterwards boosted his wealth by a fucking egregious amount. So he definitely got a hell of a return on that investment, besides just having access to the most powerful position in the world. It wasn't long after that when we had the H-1B controversy, which really angered a lot of people in the MAGA camp, including Steve Bannon. Which brings us to our most recent event at time of filming, the fallout regarding Path of Exile 2. I'm sure most of you have already heard of this by now. I'll go ahead and link a video in the description just giving you the brief overview of everything that happened. But long story short, so the game Path of Exile 2, which I myself am actually not too familiar with, Elon boasted that he was one of the top players in the game, and sure enough he was, at least in name. But he did a stream where he was playing the game and people just tore him apart because he's playing it completely wrong. He doesn't know how to interact with the maps. He's even attacking bosses in a very inefficient way, which any actual veteran player, especially at that level, they would not be making such silly mistakes. Even going through his inventory and not really knowing the specifics of what he's talking about. Kind of like what I'm doing here. But the kicker was when Asmongold, another gamer streamer, again I'm actually not familiar with him until this happened, but basically he was forced to comment on this story because that's what he does, and then everyone was like, why aren't you mentioning the Elon Musk shit? So then he did, he put out his own little criticism, and then he had his blue checkmark removed on Twitter because he insulted the king. And he went on to blow this off as if it wasn't a big deal because he didn't want to insult the man further. And he saw nothing wrong with what had happened. Crazy and ridiculous, but not nearly as crazy as Elon Musk during the Trump inauguration. Again, everyone already knows about this by now. When he gave the Nazi salute. It's really hard to call that anything else when he's actively backing the far-right parties in Germany, along with everything else we just discussed. Now, the most interesting question going forward is just how long can Elon Musk and Donald Trump sustain their relationship when their egos are so similar and the world is only so big? Again, Elon has accomplished a great many things, and some the first in all of humanity, electric cars, reusable rockets, torturing monkeys, developing Neuralink. It is an impressive resume, even if he's just working off the tireless backs of other engineers and employees who are just more or less indentured to him. Hashtag H1B. And I myself, as someone who used to love Elon Musk, obviously now I'm just highly disappointed, but not nearly as disappointed as Sam Harris, who recently just put out a very telling article on his Substack explaining the relationship he had with Elon, and then they had a whole falling out during COVID, and just getting Sam Harris's perspective on what Elon Musk has become in recent years. Yeah, it's just really interesting and definitely worth reading. I'll see if I can't link that down below as well. But I'm not the only person who had this sort of character arc with Elon Musk. Penelope Scott thought something very similar, because Penelope Scott in 2020 released a little song called Rat, and it basically encompasses my entire experience with Elon Musk. She details how she was captivated by him as a symbol of success. In the lyrics, she goes on to talk about how she fell for the flamethrowers, the tunnels, and the tech. I studied code because I wanted to do something great, like you, but the tragedy is that only half of it was true. And just like in my own experience, the lyrics say, I fell for circuit boards and rocket ships and pictures of the stars. If you could only be what you pretend you are. Then, as many of us might be feeling today, fuck your tunnels, fuck your cars, fuck your rockets, fuck your cars again. You promised you'd be Tesla, but you're just another Edison. Because Tesla broke a patent, all you ever broke were hearts. I can't believe you tore humanity apart. Yeah, that definitely hits a little different after the Twitter acquisition and the campaign contributions and all the bullshit. The song does an incredible job of encapsulating just that adoration, wanting to be him, wanting to do incredible things that help humanity, but ultimately it just takes a turn for the worse. Yeah, I'll link that song down below. But in the meanwhile, guys, that concludes our video for today. My general thoughts on Elon Musk and all the fuckery surrounding him. Shout out to Penelope Scott for writing a banger of a track. So yeah, that's all I have for this video. Definitely let me know if there's an album on the wall that you want to see me review next. We have an entire series, the Revolution Reviews, where we break down the lyrics to each one of these albums, seeing what they have to say. Or if there's a song just like Penelope Scott's Rat that you think fits everything surrounding either Elon Musk or Trump, definitely let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you like the vibe. And until then, guys, we will see you on the next video. Later.